Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Elia. I'm doing well. How are you? Shout out to Jennifer. Shout out to Elia. Thank you, Jennifer. Shout out to Matt Christie. Thank you for being here. If you want your name shouted out, write your name in the chat so I can shout you out. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Callie. Shout out to Lila. Shout out to Allison. Shout out to Mallory. Thank you so much for joining. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Jesse. Also leave a like. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Summer. Shout out to Rachel. Shout out to Avery. Shout out to Ziggy. Thank you for subscribing. Oops, let me write that again. Shout out to Ziggy. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Shout out to Helen. Shout out to Sabella. Shout out to Christian. Shout out to David. Shout out to Sia. Shout out to Maddock. Shout out to Miguel. Shout out to Tara. Shout out to New Today. Leave a like. I hope we can get to 100 likes. Shout out to Valen. Shout out to Rafaela. Shout out to Jimena. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to the person that said supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Shout out to that person. Shout out to Ruby. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Farah. Shout out to Ruby. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Grace. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Claire. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jocelyn. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to BSK. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mark. Shout out to Samar. Shout out to Aaron. Shout out to Cassie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Moira. Thank you for subscribing. Leave a like if you enjoy these live streams. Let's try to get to 100 likes. Shout out to Dulce. Shout out to Malia. Shout out to Sloan. Shout out to Cami. Shout out to Lithia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Nevada. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Rosalie. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Also subscribe if you like my content. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Catherine. Shout out to Leo. Shout out to Daryl. Shout out to Janelle. Happy birthday. Shout out to Naomi. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Noah. Shout out to Anaya. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ciarelli. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Vicky. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Kira Mai. Shout out to Santiago. Shout out to Amaya. Shout out to Rada. Or Rida. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jamie. Shout out to Alessia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Zoe. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Laureen. Shout out to Joseph. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ariana. Shout out to Hi. Shout out to Luis. Shout out to Juan. Shout out to Charlotte. Shout out to Nightstar. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Clara. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Caleb. Shout out to Skylin. Shout out to Addison. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jade. Happy birthday. Shout out to Zaylin or Xylin. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Let's try to get to 100 likes. Shout out to Logan. Shout out to Mia or Maya, sorry. Shout out to Kaysen or Kyson. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Julian. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Carlos. Shout out to Landon. Shout out to Madeline. Shout out to Savannah. Shout out to Timmy. Shout out to Bryn. Thank you for subscribing. Leave a like. We're almost at 100 likes. Shout out to Isla. Shout out to Maria. Shout out to Gavin. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Atina. Shout out to these people. Only 21 more likes to 100. On to the next page. Like and subscribe if you like my content. Thank you for being here. Leave your name in the comments if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Alexa. Shout out to Zafina. Shout out to Whitney. Shout out to Blakely. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Morgan Reese. Shout out to Wendy. Shout out to Dayleza. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Deliza. Shout out to Julieta. Shout out to Alexa. Leave a like if you're enjoying this live stream. Shout out to Sadie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Izzy. Shout out to Pandora. Shout out to Susie. Shout out to Carielis. Shout out to Jade. We're almost at 100 likes. Leave a like if you are enjoying the shout outs. Shout out to Nevaeh. Shout out to Jace. Shout out to Jojo. Shout out to Marley. Shout out to Rayan. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Sylvia. Shout out to Delilah. Thank you for 100 likes. Please subscribe if you enjoy my content. Shout out to Justin. Shout out to Maddox. Shout out to Estelle. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Isla. Shout out to Serenity. Oops. Shout out to Georgia. Shout out to Roxy. Shout out to Mia. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Brooklyn. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Yalimal. Shout out to Salito. Shout out to Nikolai. Shout out to Quinn. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Kenya. Shout out to Rosie. Please leave a like if you enjoy the live stream. Also subscribe if you enjoy my content. Check out my content. Shout out to Autumn. Shout out to Miriam. Shout out to Winston. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Pilates. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Myalishka. Shout out to Gumiko. Shout out to Kiana. Shout out to these people. Let's try to get to 200 likes. Give it a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Thank you so much for being here. On to the next page. We're almost at 200 likes. We're 50 likes away. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Raya. Shout out to Matei. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Lucia. Shout out to Everly. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Evangeline. Shout out to Huda. Shout out to Lexi. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Shreyan. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Bila. Shout out to Zainab. Shout out to Bree. Shout out to Maria. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Subscribe if you like my content. I would truly appreciate it. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Cheyenne. Shout out to Angel. Shout out to Billy. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Abdul. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Cami. Shout out to Della. Shout out to Sky. Shout out to Holly. Shout out to Kiara. Shout out to Kimberly. Shout out to Colleen. Shout out to Catherine. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Liana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Naomi. Shout out to Astrid. Shout out to Josie. Shout out to Mila. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kira. Kira or Kyra. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Benji. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Skylin. Shout out to Kason. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Josie. Shout out to Mavis. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Evie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Rain. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. We're almost at 200 likes. Only 200, oh, not 200. Only 20 more. I almost said only 200 more to 200 likes. Shout out to, oh, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Cielo. Shout out to Aubrey. We're only 12 likes away from 200. Shout out to Obs. Shout out to Tiana. Shout out to Payson. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Luna. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to Pallavi. Shout out to Fern. Shout out to Connor. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Give me like 30 seconds. Thank you so much for your patience. Shout out to Brea. Also, thank you for 200 likes. Yay. Shout out to Van. Shout out to True. Shout out to Sierra. Shout out to Jimena. Shout out to Hermione. Shout out to Brayden. Shout out to Serenity. Shout out to Ava. Let me write Ava again. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Indy. Shout out to Alex. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Bradbin Jr. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Kit. Shout out to Sahaj. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lori. Shout out to Celia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Bibiana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Leah. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Amani. Shout out to Orion. Oh wait, Orion? No, sorry. Shout out to Oriana. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Adley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Maddie. Happy birthday. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Tammy. Shout out to Haven. Shout out to Spence. Shout out to Adriana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Nancy. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Zena. Thank you for subscribing. Also leave a like if you're enjoying this live stream. Please leave a like. Shout out to Elliot. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Gianna. Shout out to Addison. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Aisha. Shout out to Tayana. Shout out to Mariama. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Leave a like if you're enjoying these live streams and these shout outs. Let's try to get to 300 likes. Thank you so much for being here. Check out my content. I post other content. If you like my content, please subscribe. I would truly appreciate it. Shout out to Dino. Shout out to Eden. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Neon. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Kate. Shout out to June. Shout out to Sam. Shout out to Carlitos. Shout out to Daisy. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to Sam. Shout out to Mars. Shout out to Lucia. Shout out to Lucy. Shout out to Dean. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Marley. Shout out to Skyla. Shout out to Kyle. Shout out to Jay. Shout out to Bianca. Shout out to Ivy. Shout out to Cat's Eye. Shout out to Sawyer. Shout out to Dolly. Shout out to Yasmin. Leave a like if you're enjoying this live stream. I hope we can get to 300 likes. We're almost there. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Smith. Shout out to Sushi. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Alana. Shout out to Rihanna. Shout out to Kyle. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Carson. Oh wait, how do you spell Carson? Let me write it again. Shout out to Carson. Shout out to Diana. Shout out to Kobe. Shout out to Jocelyn. Shout out to Ivan. Shout out to Claire. Shout out to Yunche. Shout out to Juan. Shout out to Isabel. Shout out to Gavin. Shout out to LeBron. Shout out to Lexi. Leave a like. We're almost at 300 likes. Shout out to Cassidy. Shout out to Alanis. Shout out to Malia. Shout out to Fatima. Shout out to Kate. Shout out to Valentina. Shout out to these people. We're almost at 300 likes. Only 20 more likes away. I hope you can like so we can get to 300. On to the next page. Thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe if you like my content. Shout out to Aria. Shout out to Ivana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Caleb. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Diana. Or Diana, sorry. Shout out to Aisla. Shout out to Charlotte. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Addie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Gian. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Aaliyah. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Isla. Thank you for showing me how to pronounce your name. Shout out to Adam. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Dewey. Thank you for subscribing. Oops, I forgot to add another color. Shout out to Wenda. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Aliana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Tim. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ryan. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jen. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Clara. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mitchie. Shout out to Shaq. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to Kanai. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ellen. Shout out to Brody. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Lulu. Shout out to Jude. Shout out to Clara. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Rabia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kendra. Shout out to Juriel. Shout out to Ali. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jaslyn. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Britfield. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Brecken. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kyle. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kaylee. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Itzel. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Holly. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to... Oh, Brecken, I'm so sorry. Shout out to Brecken. Please forgive me if I spell your name wrong. It's because the chat goes by so fast. I don't do it on purpose, so please forgive me. Shout out to Brooke. Shout out to Clara. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Becky. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Jack. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Clement. Also leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Dominic. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to these people. Thank you for 300 likes. We're at 314. Thank you so much. On to the next page. Subscribe if you enjoy my shout outs and my live streams. I also post other content, so I hope you can check it out as well. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Faith. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Todd. Shout out to Liam. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Jackson. Shout out to Sayla or Sayla. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Annabella. Shout out to Vincent. Leave a like if you're enjoying this live stream. Shout out to Allison. Shout out to Carmen. Shout out to Raya. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mads. Was it Mads with an S or Mads with a Z? Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Ezekiel. Shout out to Sharon. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Joseph. Shout out to Asha or Aisha. Shout out to Benji. Shout out to Calvin. Shout out to Penny. Shout out to Elijah. Shout out to Shania. Shout out to, oh, sorry, the chat's going really fast. Shout out to Class. Shout out to Elba. Shout out to Amanda. Shout out to Meredith. Shout out to Min. Shout out to Kiana. Shout out to Reese. Shout out to Jasmine. Shout out to Kaden. Shout out to Lilium. Leave a like if you enjoyed the live stream. Shout out to Quincy. Shout out to Valentina. Shout out to Esther. Shout out to Joshua. Shout out to Belza. Shout out to Winter. Shout out to Amina. Shout out to Nicole. Shout out to Evan. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Maybe we can get to 400 likes. We're halfway there. Shout out to Marlene. Shout out to Classy. Shout out to Lilia. Shout out to Allah. Shout out to Kingston. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Aaron. Shout out to Pearl. Shout out to Rana. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you so much for being here. Let's try to get it 400 likes. We're almost there. 400 likes. Like and subscribe if you like my shout outs. I also post other content, so please check it out if you have time. I would truly appreciate it. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Maria. Shout out to Kamani. Shout out to Kensley. Shout out to Zena. Shout out to Luna Mia. Shout out to Halima. Shout out to Laura. What was it? Laura? Lauren. Shout out to Lauren. Shout out to Adley. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Nikki. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Hallie. Shout out to Tatiana. Shout out to Alexandra. Shout out to Rylan or Rylan. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. We're almost at 400 likes. Shout out to London. Shout out to Eva. Shout out to Darren. Shout out to Aaliyah. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Patricia. Shout out to Galilea. Shout out to Sunny. Shout out to Sissy. Leave a like. We're almost at 400 likes. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Istoda. Shout out to Tally. Shout out to Kendra. Shout out to Kayleen. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Hilal. Shout out to Taylan. Whoops, I messed up. Shout out to Tara. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Ellie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Cami. Shout out to Faith. Shout out to Bliss. Shout out to Alexander. Shout out to Gobauer. Sorry if I mispronounced her name. Shout out to Nash. Shout out to Maddie. Happy birthday. Shout out to Ayaz. Noor. We're almost at 400 likes, only 11 more. Shout out to Chaywan. Shout out to Kaden. Shout out to Raymond. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Colton. Shout out to Amner. Shout out to Avery. Only 5 more likes to 400 likes. I think this might be my most liked live stream. So thank you so much for being here. On to the next page. Shout out to Carmelo. Shout out to Liana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Magdalena. Shout out to Hilal. Shout out to Preston. Happy birthday. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Amira. Shout out to Farouz. Shout out to Sanat. Shout out to Giselle. Shout out to Sarai. Shout out to Liana. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Sudden. Shout out to Mahi. Shout out to Jeremiah. Shout out to Araceli. Thank you for 400 likes. I think this is my most liked live stream. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Odile. Shout out to Iman. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Estefany. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Lila. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Gabby. Shout out to Samara. Shout out to Maria. Shout out to Liam. Shout out to Amina. Shout out to Angelica. Shout out to Belinda. Shout out to Fallon. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Olive. Shout out to Jesus. Shout out to Ariel. Shout out to Estrella. Shout out to Evelyn. Shout out to Romina. Shout out to Briley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kuma. Shout out to Mia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to was it Candace? Shout out to Shantae. Whoops. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to Henry. Shout out to Brooke. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Amira. Shout out to Eliza. Shout out to Jessica. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Like and subscribe if you are enjoying the shout outs. Also check out my other content. I hope you subscribe. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Alondra. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Amari. Shout out to Araceli. Shout out to Gully. Shout out to Rafaela. Shout out to Sai. Shout out to Odette. Shout out to Roxana. Leave a like if you're enjoying this live stream. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Lainey. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Cynthia. Shout out to Antonio. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Gracelyn. Shout out to John. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. I wonder if we can get to 500 likes. Shout out to Benny. Shout out to Nevea. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Casey. Shout out to Kevin. Shout out to Sajid. Shout out to Karis. Shout out to Abida. Shout out to Jacob. Shout out to Saika. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Cynthia. Shout out to Nash. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Callie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Quinn. Shout out to Vivienne. Shout out to Carl. Shout out to Spawn. Shout out to Ayushi. Shout out to Hamburger. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Catlea. Shout out to Roxy. Shout out to Nasheen. Shout out to Lennon. Shout out to Sabrina. Shout out to Kalia. Shout out to Allison. Shout out to Logan. Shout out to Kathy. We're almost at 500 likes. I hope we can get there. Only a little more than halfway there. Shout out to Raul. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Joy. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Margaret. Shout out to Diana. Shout out to Levi. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Oh. Leave a like if you are enjoying this live stream. I hope we can get to 500 likes. We're almost there. Also subscribe to my channel if you like the rest of my content. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Annabella. Shout out to Des. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Kit. Shout out to Isa. Shout out to Hillary. Shout out to Sayabil. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced her name. Shout out to Junior. Shout out to Chelsea. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Karina. Shout out to Zane. Shout out to Rohi. Shout out to Shania. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Carmen. Shout out to Heather. Shout out to Nyla. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ziyar. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Zorian. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Bethany. Shout out to Araceli. Shout out to Aria. Shout out to Malia. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Cassie, or Casey, sorry. We're almost at 500 likes. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Victor. Shout out to Kanan, or Kynan. Shout out to Cassidy. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Alondra. Shout out to Sophia. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. We're almost at 500 likes. Shout out to Tristan. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Sierra. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Rowan. Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Veronica. Shout out to Phineas. Shout out to Charlotte. Shout out to Jaslyn. Shout out to Asante. Shout out to Gio. Shout out to Helosa. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Helosa. Shout out to Miguel. Shout out to Judd. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Reagan. Shout out to these people. We're almost at 500 likes. Please give it a like if you're enjoying this live stream. Thank you so much for being here. On to the next page. Subscribe to my channel if you can check it out and see if you want to subscribe or not. I would appreciate it. Shout out to Brenda. Let me do that again. Shout out to Brenda. There we go. Shout out to Jenna Lee. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Salome. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Arhat. Shout out to Larry. Shout out to Nash. Shout out to Salim John. We're almost at 500 likes. Only like 22 more likes. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Adrielle. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Miam. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Jimena. Only 7 likes away from 500 likes. I hope you can like. Shout out to Kanupriya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jack. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Pam. Shout out to Jordan. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Gabriella. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jonah. Shout out to Jose. Shout out to Brianna. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kathy. Shout out to Gunner. Shout out to Valeria. Shout out to Kevin. Shout out to Daisy. Shout out to Gnarly. Shout out to Akanksha. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you so much for 500 likes. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate your support. Shout out to Paula. Shout out to Cinder. Shout out to Ainat. Thank you for subscribing. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Verity. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Agam. Shout out to Shina. Shout out to Jonah. Shout out to Kamia. Shout out to Damien. Shout out to Nicole. Shout out to Brinley. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Moira. Shout out to Amberly. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Eliana. Shout out to these people. Thank you so much for being here. On to the next page. Leave a like if you're enjoying these live streams. Also subscribe to my channel. I post other content there, so I hope you can check it out and support me. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out, let me redo that. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out to Tammy. Shout out to Mitchell. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Juliet. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Henley. Shout out to Mean Girl. Shout out to Abadan. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Maddox. Shout out to Jonah. Shout out to Nadim. Shout out to Tenley. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Autumn. Shout out to Aviana. Whoops, it was with one. Let me do it again. Shout out to Aviana. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Sunny. Shout out to Kamari. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Yoko. Shout out to Lachlan. Shout out to Leland. Shout out to Haven. Shout out to Karomi. Shout out to Sorry. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mark. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Alessandra. Shout out to Lucia. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Amy. Shout out to Thailand. Or Thailand. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kit Kat. Shout out to Asaya. Shout out to DJ. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Jose. Shout out to Axel. Shout out to Adriana. Shout out to Charlie. Shout out to Ducky. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Destiny. Shout out to Mazion. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Shane. Shout out to Aurora. Shout out to Yusuf. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Adele. Shout out to Zarina. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Also subscribe to my channel if you like my content. Shout out to Demi. Shout out to Crystal. Shout out to Avery. Shout out to Sandia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Abdullah. Shout out to Kate. Shout out to Mina. Shout out to Alena. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Toby. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Boojay. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mileshka. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Tess. Is it Tess or Tessa? Tessa, sorry. Shout out to Evelyn. Shout out to Roge. Wait, let me spell that again. Shout out to Roge. There we go. Shout out to Lily. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Manu. Shout out to Max. Shout out to Renee. Shout out to Leo. Shout out to Dynasty. Shout out to Journey. Shout out to Alondra. Shout out to Jack. Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Pretty. Shout out to Tom. Leave a like if you're enjoying. Shout out to Tayana. Shout out to Hallie. Shout out to Bob. Shout out to Willa. Shout out to Carly. Shout out to Gymnast Girly. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Cheryl. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Chloe. Thank you for subscribing. Leave a like if you are enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Kaya. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Will. Shout out to Jesus. Shout out to Sophie. Thank you for subscribing. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Shout out to Nelly. Shout out to Carly. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out to Hermes. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lyric. Shout out to Janet. Shout out to Randall. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lilac. Thank you so much. Shout out to these people. Thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my live streams, and check out my other content. I hope you can support my channel by subscribing. I will see you all next time. And so subscribe so you can check when I live stream. I try to live stream daily, but at different times. Thank you so much. Have a great night or have a great day. Take care. I will see you all next time. Bye.